Progress doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means to do just enough. Enough to nourish, not deplete. Enough to coexist and not dominate. And only when this balance is there will we be able to create a world that works for all. Hello and welcome. I am Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. This week we meet people who are confronting complex environmental challenges. But instead of pushing back with force, they are trying to find smart and steady ways to restore balance. They are everywhere. Many are so done with them that they're even called rodents of the skies. We are talking about pigeons. And Mumbai's pigeon problem isn't just about nuisance. Now it's turning into a full-blown crisis. But what is fueling this? A tradition that many considered sacred and good intentions.
I remember playing with pigeon feathers when I would go downstairs. I would use them as quills, and that was my favorite pastime. I did not think that a harmless feather would suddenly just ruin my life for the next many years because of all of these allergies, asthma, everything. I couldn't participate in sports in school. I couldn't really do much.
Navya Disha and her mother now live in a high-rise apartment in the central suburb of Mumbai. They have put up a net to ward off pigeons. For years, Navya suffered from severe allergies caused by pigeon exposure.
That point where we were staying, it was a oldish housing society, and there was a situation where there was dust, there were rodents, there were also pigeons around. So at that point, it didn't strike me at all. But when she was about 5, I think all her allergies kind of came to a peak. She had dermal allergies, she had gastric allergies, and we were shocked to see that there was a +3 sensitivity to a few triggers, and these were pigeon fur, pigeon poop, and a few more things.
The problem is that every day crowds of people visit the centuries-old Kabutarkhana, pigeon feeding zone, in the neighborhood of Dadar. Mercy feeding is traditionally seen as an act of compassion. Businessman Vajlal Jain has been doing it for decades. Mercy feeding is the biggest act of kindness we can do. These are helpless creatures, dogs, cats and pigeons. But now doctors are warning that these helpless pigeons are linked to a severe lung disease.
Hypersensitive pneumonitis is a type of ILD, that is interstitial lung disease, and it has been directly related to the exposure to pigeon dust, pigeon droppings and pigeon feathers. It is on the rise in the recent times because of the increased exposure to these pigeons in residential areas.
Pulmonologist Sandeep Mestri treats an average of 7 patients a month with the condition, which can be fatal. It is caused by repeated inhalation of antigens from pigeon droppings and pigeon bloom. Exposure to these antigens can trigger an immune response in the lungs.
If it is not corrected at the right time, there are chances that because of the chronic exposure, the lung may get fibrosed. And a fibrosed lung is of no use. So the patients usually land up with symptoms of chronic cough, chronic breathlessness.
Once she was no longer exposed to pigeons, Navya's health began to recover after just 3 months.
Subsequently, her dermal allergies went away, her hive stopped entirely. Now that's the interesting part, right? We think the pigeon allergy was a bronchial problem, but because the strength of the overall body improved, the dermal allergies went away.
The rock pigeon's natural habitat is coastal cliffs, but these days they are found in cities too. All over Mumbai, people feed them. The city has banned it and imposed fines of 500 rupees, the equivalent of around 50 euros. But this is rarely enforced. The authorities refuse to be interviewed about the effectiveness of the measure. But Jen won't be stopped from feeding pigeons, not by fines and not by medical warnings. Do you know that pigeon exposure can lead to infections?
नहीं कभी नहीं नहीं गलत है
No, that's incorrect. That's just something people say. You don't get diseases. We feed them at home too. We have been doing it for 10-15 years. There's been no problem.
खाली होता है डालते रहे कोई तकलीफ नहीं है
Basically, feeding pigeon is considered as very religious or some kind of a tradition or some kind of a in India, and so it becomes very personal for them. They feel that okay, he's coming into my personal space, so I would try to avoid it. Many patients have stopped coming to us just because we, in daily visits, we tell them that please avoid this, which they cannot, and so, well, they have to suffer it later on.
Pigeons are fed an estimated 40 kilos per capita a year. Some believe the best way to get the problem under control is with targeted culls. One conservation organization wants to regulate pigeon populations with a natural method.
So one of the projects of BNHS is to conservation breeding of falcons and goshawk and falcons, some of the raptors, and then release that population after breeding, release that population back in the urban atmosphere like Mumbai, which may control the pigeon population naturally.
But until such long-term solutions take effect, the health risk for vulnerable people remain.
Any cluster of pigeons in a society is going to affect 100% of infants in that locality to have a compromised immunity, which will in turn trigger asthma, other bronchial triggers. Do the math. You need a legislation around it for you to understand that if I don't curb this with legislation, that this problem is not going to go away.
Many people are at risk from exposure to pigeons. The sooner hard and fast rules about pigeon feeding are introduced, the better.
Exploding pigeon population is a problem that cities across the world are facing. Next, we head to Berlin. The German capital has taken a surprisingly compassionate and structured approach to deal with this issue. Think bird lofts, fake eggs, and feeding programs. Sounds odd? Maybe, but it is working. So let's take a look at how one city is dealing with its pigeon problem without letting them take over.
Pigeons. Some call them flying rats, others feral pets. Tens of thousands live in the German capital of Berlin. For 14 years, Doreen Rother has fed them in the city centre. It may seem counterproductive, but she says it keeps them away from the public.
They only eat grains, and so if we don't feed them, they have to be there where people eat, among the places where restaurants are, and they search for food all day long among the legs of the people, and people don't like this, and it's not good for the pigeons.
Eating greasy food from the trash is bad for the birds' digestion and makes them more of a nuisance to humans.
It's a problem for the city because of the dirt they create, and so about the food they find everywhere. So I know people don't like pigeons so much, but honestly I like pigeons.
I love pigeons, they're part of the culture. I mean, you don't see enough of them to want to get rid of them, but yeah, they're peaceful beings.
I think they're quite dangerous, not in the sense that they attack people, but in the sense that they spread diseases.
It hasn't always been like this, pigeons clogging our cities. This bird breed, the rock pigeon, originally lived wild in nature on steep rocky cliffs and narrow edges. That is, until humans began domesticating them to raise for food and for delivering messages during wartime. And as a source of endless entertainment. Today's pigeons aren't as helpful. Roaming free in urban spaces, they're left to reproduce and leave their mark.
So here, even in front of the elevator, there are many feces.
They poop every 15 to 30 minutes.
There's no more danger than from normal wild birds. But if these feces pile up, then it's really not nice, and there might be some bacteria like salmonella inside, and this could be a problem for humans and other animals.
Limiting the number of pigeons in the city is tricky. One solution is to install spikes and netting in public spaces so they can't roost as easily.
To manage those feral pigeons is not an easy thing, because you have to get your hands on those pigeons and control the reproduction. And for that, it has been proven that pigeon lofts are quite suitable.
A pigeon loft, where magic happens. A bird apartment to flock, feed and nest together. Doreen Rother helps monitor this spot, one of 3 citywide. Next to a major train station, injured pigeons are also brought here. At first they're isolated in cages before they can join the others.
Careful.
Pigeons are known to have one mate for life. This loft is built for 120 pairs but is home to even more. These narrow perches resemble the bird's natural habitat. The pink dye sprayed under the pigeon's wings confuses birds of prey and scares predators away.
They all look different. And this is what makes it clear that it's not wild animals, but that it's domestic animals, because we have different wild pigeons, like turtle doves or wood doves, and they all look the same. All wood doves look the same, all turtle doves look the same, but these are all different breeds.
The loft isn't just a cozy place that keeps birds off the street. What attracts them is the food, but they stay to nest. Pigeons lay 2 eggs every few weeks, all year round. To control the population, volunteers swap them for artificial eggs.
So I just take out the egg, which normally is the real one, and then I have some artificial ones.
It's a drop in the ocean, considering all the eggs hatching in Berlin each day.
What we see is that there are far less pigeons on the station, on the platforms, where they used to be, and this is very clear. But the reduction in the number can only start when there are enough lofts.
But how realistic is that? Many German cities are testing different methods to limit the number of pigeons, but they haven't found the perfect solution yet.
When your home is sitting on a ground that is sinking and the ocean creeps closer every year, how do you even begin to plan for your future? In Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, rising sea levels, unchecked construction failing infrastructure and overdrawn groundwater are converging into a full-blown urban crisis. This is a warning for many Indian coastal cities too, where groundwater stress and unchecked construction are already beginning to show cracks. Let's take a look at how some communities in Jakarta are trying to adapt.
Indonesia's capital is constantly threatened by high water. By 2050, 90% of North Jakarta could be permanently flooded. A constant worry for Suzy Susanti and her family, whose informal housing borders the ocean.
I live here with my husband, mother, child and younger sibling. I'm a trader and my husband transports deliveries of salted fish. The fear of flooding can feel exhausting. We worry that floodwater could enter our home and that our child might drown.
Suzy Sazanti lives in Muara Angke, a low-lying fishing community next to the Java Sea. It's a precarious existence for most of its roughly 18,000 inhabitants. The sea level is rising and rains are heavier and more frequent as human-caused climate change exacerbates the risk of flooding. Water in Jakarta's rivers can back up, especially since dense settlements narrow and block the flow with sludge, feces and waste. We're trying to widen and deepen the rivers to increase water flow capacity. But residents must help too, by preventing the accumulation of garbage, which is a problem across Jakarta. The high flood risk is worsened by ground subsidence. In addition to being extremely heavy, high-rises vastly increase water use. Faced with an inadequate municipal supply, Jakartans have dug wells to pump up groundwater, causing the land to sink up to 10 centimeters per year.
The groundwater extractors involve not only residents but also factories that draw from deep groundwater sources. This activity must be regulated and halted.
In North Jakarta, the government is building a coastal embankment to hold back the sea. 23 of the planned 39 kilometers are finished, but some parts are already leaking. And the wall has yet to reach the part of Muara Angke where Susi Susanti and her family live. A much bigger wall may also be built in the ocean itself. It would create a whole new district. For now, a network of storage basins, dikes and pumps mitigates flooding from seawater and overflowing rivers. More green spaces in Jakarta would increase natural groundwater replenishment. Allowing the rain to find its natural path could help prevent land subsidence and lower flood risk. Jakarta's water comes from 2 dams to the east and the west of the city. An agreement has now been reached with the local stakeholders, which guarantees Jakarta an increased water supply. Currently, 66% of Jakarta's area has clean water. By 2030, we aim to reach 100%. Where does the water come from? It comes from the Jatiluhur and Karan dams, which will supply 7,200 litres per second. This water will be brought to Jakarta and distributed to areas that have not yet been served. Some areas will remain flood-prone for some time, and people are starting to adapt. For example, this flood-resistant steel construction in Kampung Aquarium in North Jakarta. The modern apartment complex may be a model for nearby Muara Angke, perhaps even a model for a safe home for Susi Susanti and her family. Kampung Aquarium was originally an informal settlement that the government demolished more than 10 years ago. When the residents protested against their eviction, Elisa Sutanujaya and her team helped to negotiate a compromise.
During the rebuilding process, we wanted to demonstrate that this multi-story settlement could be accepted by all parties, especially the government. However, it takes time for residents who previously lived in ground-level houses to adjust to moving into multi-story housing.
In Muara Angke, there are now 200 smaller stilt houses built with a steel construction, a pilot project supported by the Indonesian government. It's unclear whether the entire neighborhood will be redeveloped. Susi Susanti is skeptical. An apartment in a stilt building would be safer, but she wants her own home.
Although in our current home we only have a building permit, the house is ours. In flats, we need to pay rent.
A solution for Muara Angke will require politicians and residents to find a compromise, as was achieved in Kampung Aquarium.
Nazia will be 30 years old in 2050. I hope my child will be more successful than I am, have a better life, receive a good education, and secure a decent job. I hope she lives in a good environment, one that is free from air pollution and, of course, free from flooding.
Jakarta is trying hard to find solutions to its environmental problems. As sea levels rise, it is a race against time.
Human-induced climate change is posing a serious threat to our food and nutritional security. Unpredictable rain, heat waves, changing weather and water stress are making farming harder by the day. But some people in the city are experimenting with a way which does not require as much water, uses just a fraction of it, doesn't even need soil, and can actually grow food in the middle of this concrete jungle. Could this be the real future of farming in our cities? Let's take a look.
A kilo of these tomatoes cost 10 rupees today. Just a few months ago, they were at 200 rupees. Supply was low and demand was high. But it was more than just about the market. A part of this fluctuation is human-caused climate change. Farmers around India are struggling with water shortages or unpredictable weather. But there are now other promising ways to grow food. Meet Adarsh, who is developing hydroponic techniques. I am an engineering graduate and now I'm a full-time urban farmer. We know that plants are grown in soil, but in hydroponics, they are grown in water. Here, we do NFT or nutrients film technique. In this NFT channel, we use net cups with cocoa peats on it. This helps to penetrate the roots. There will be nutritious water flowing through the channel that supplies essential nutrients for the plant. And the remaining nutritious water gets channeled back to the water tank. So there will be no water wastage. But hydroponic is old. We found evidence from the 6th century BC at the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It is believed that the lush gardens survived through a pulley system of water from the river. Over time, hydroponics has also allowed rice to be grown throughout Asia, where it's still grown in flooded fields. Marco Polo was known to have spread its use in his travels across the world. It's efficient because hydroponics can actually save up to 90% of water compared to traditional farming. Since it is done in a climate-controlled environment, evaporation loss is low and hardly any groundwater is depleted. The other advantage is that crops are protected from very hot or wet summers. Commercial farms currently grow up to 50 kgs of green vegetables per day. It is still happening at a small scale with only higher income clients. The upfront cost is one of the biggest limiting factors of this technology, as well as a lack in technical know-how. Small or medium-scale farmers cannot afford it, and hydroponics is so far only available to urban enthusiasts with access to a terrace, like D. Suresh, who cultivates up to 40% of the vegetables he uses on his terrace. Adarsh helped D. Suresh set up his hydroponics terrace farm, where the installation cost was 20,000 Indian rupees or around 215 euros. The future is going to be hydroponics and terraces. So if we start now, we can produce a lot. If this happens, there is no chance of tomatoes' price to rise to 200 rupees. So establishments that have capital are more likely to invest in bigger farms. Like this pizza restaurant in Chennai that grows 50% of the vegetables that they use. Here you can see some crops like capsicum, jalapenos, which are the main ingredients for pizza, and they are very expensive in the market. But with the advantages of hydroponics, they can produce this at a low cost. Larger problems of reliance on the market and the climate still loom for the rest of the state. But such solutions can make a difference, especially in cities, if they become more affordable.
That's all for today's episode. From finding ways to farm that do not strain our natural resources to rethinking our relationship with our cities and the animals that live in it. Each story today was a reminder that sustainability is not about the extremes. It is about finding the middle ground, the balance. Do you know of any such initiatives that are striking this balance? Do let us know, and do not forget to follow us on our Instagram at DW_environment for more stories like this.
These farms, called chinampas, are part of Mexico's indigenous agricultural system and are really productive. A method from Aztec times, today farmers still build each plot by hand from the lake bottom, using reeds and earth. The mounds of earth are secured by trees. The roots hold the soil together. The chinampa's soil is porous like a sponge. There is space for air and water to circulate so crops grow well, absorbing and retaining water. The system is so efficient that it can churn out hundreds of thousands of produce each year. Chinampas are also home to hundreds of species. With acute hunger growing and food security more important than ever, the farming method could be copied elsewhere.
I will see you next week with more such stories. Until then, take care, goodbye, namaskar.